Today, we're going to wrap up a year of reading. This year I projected to read 50 books, I think, possibly. Does that seem like a little? Because if yes, you have been brainwashed by BookTube and BookTok into thinking 300 books a year is normal. It's not. Like, as somebody who has a full-time job and is traveling the world and has a little bit of a life, just a little, not really a lot, reading 50 books is basically a book a week, and that's great. I'm happy with that. I also read because I love it, not to finish a certain amount of books, not to obsessively track everything I do and ruin the hobby that I love. But that is a different video, and I'm not talking about that today. Today, I just want to talk about the books that I read this year. Welcome back to Bookaka. I don't know what day we're on, but it's Bookaka. It's Hanukkah related book content. And why are we talking about the books I read this year? Because again, Hanukkah's at the end of the year. Books. The books I read this year. I read because I love it, not to finish a certain amount of books. I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't have read this 661,619 word and 2,000 page fan fiction. I mean, that is a heck of a big book and a fan fiction. Oh, it was amazing. So, yeah, let's begin. I just have a note on my phone and my laptop listing the books I read. Like, it's pretty chill, actually, with me. I started tracking in 2022. 2022, I read 41 books. 2023, I read 48 books. And 2024, right now, I'm on my 49th book. So, that's pretty good. The first book is called My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You I'm Sorry by Frederick Backman. I was in an Airbnb in Italy, and I found this book in English, and I was like, is this a joke? Is this a joke? Because this is an awesome author. He wrote Beartown, and I loved it. Actually, I hadn't realized that at the time. I just picked this up, and I was like, let me start reading it. I got like a quarter of the way through, loved it, and we left the Airbnb. So I had to find it in my library, put it on hold, and then I finished it. And it was a good book. It was just Frederick Backman writes well. I enjoyed Beartown more, but I really did enjoy My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You I'm Sorry. It's from like a little kid's perspective, and the whole time you're like, is he messing with us? Is this for real? I don't get it. The next book, it was a short fan fiction called Perfectly Normal, thank you very much. And it's a Harry Potter fan fiction that Dudley's kid turns out to be a wizard, and he has to call Harry to like ask him questions. I love the premise. It was really short. It was fun. Loved it. Okay. She went all the way. Don't even remember this. Like, don't even remember what it was about. But so yeah, I can't even say anything. Then I don't even know where I was, but for some reason I read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Sports Edition. Oh wait, I actually do remember. I was staying in my aunt's house, and she has little kids, and I was like, all right, just reading this for the weekend. I think I finished it in like an hour or something. Yeah. Okay. Next book is one of the highlights of 2024, The Running Grave by Robert Galbraith. Now, when I tell you that reading these books just puts me in like a trance and I can't do anything until I'm done them, this was like the fifth or sixth book of the series. If you like crime fiction, characters are amazing. The plots are awesome. It is dark and morbid also. It is fun. They are fun. And for somebody who usually only reads fantasy, like and gets obsessed with fantasy, these books are just amazing. I finally read Coraline. I was like, I gotta read it. I just gotta read it. The next book is The Secret History, which again, I was in the middle of reading this book and I was like, wait, I've read this already. Ugh, still a really good book. I really enjoyed it, but I was like annoyed that I had already read it. Um, Next book is just like a really random book picked up at a secondhand bookstore. It's How to Kill Men and Get Away with It. No, it wasn't. It was kind of boring. Like I feel like it was an interesting premise, but it was the concept of just a woman, like a lot of female rage, but she just didn't write that well, so I didn't enjoy it that much. Okay, Good Omens. I actually listened to this as a graphic audiobook. If you've never listened to graphic audiobooks, I highly recommend it. Highly. It's like a radio show and like a movie for your ears. They have like different characters and there's like noise and it's so much fun. Um, yeah, I'm like when I heard Harry Potter was getting made into a graphic audio, I like cry tears of joy. For real. I'm so excited. So Good Omens is really fun. Then I was walking around Thailand and there was all these English books. And of course we had to buy the English books. My husband had never read Hunger Games. And I was like, you must right now buy Hunger Games. Like they they're such good books, you have to read them. So he's like, okay. So he read them and then of course I had to reread them. So I read Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. Yes, still amazing books. Still really good. Love them. Okay, next one, also highly recommended by somebody we met on our travels called Dark Matter. It was like kind of like a psychological science fiction thriller. Um, kind of like a love conquers all kind of thing. Trippy and fun. Yeah, I liked it. Okay. Next is Witches Abroad, which is going back to Discworld. You're going to see a lot of that here. I read a lot of Discworld. So, Terry Pratchett, Discworld, really good books. I highly recommend it. Okay. Next was just like a random book that I found in the library called The Dinner. It said it was kind of like Gone Girl. So I love Gone Girl. Read it so many times. I was like, hey, gotta check it out, right? But it's just like the main characters abuse and kill. Wait, I shouldn't say this. Okay, this is spoilers for The Dinner. The main characters abuse and kill a homeless woman, and then they're trying to get away with it. And then one person's gonna tell, and then the cousins commit, it's like patricide, infanticide. How do you say cousin to side? Basically, cousin kills his cousin because he's like, I'm not letting the secret out. I'm not ruining my life. And it was actually like a really also like trippy book to read, like what's happening. But at the same time, I was like, I really hate you, main characters. I really do. Next was a really random book called Nation. I actually totally misrepresented the book Nation. It was actually a book by Terry Pratchett that I also found in a secondhand bookstore. I confused it with another one that I can't remember the title of and can't find anywhere. This book was great. Hilarious and fun, and a low fantasy where this boy is alone on an island after everyone he knows and loves has been killed by a storm until a shipwrecked girl comes and she's waiting for her father to rescue her, and then more survivors take refuge on the island, and now these two start to form a new nation. It's like a deeply poignant look at faith and humanity with a healthy dose of humor. Read it. Then I got into Graceling, which I love Graceling. I had already read it as a kid, and then for some reason, were people talking about it, or I don't know, but my husband was suggested it, and he started reading it, and I read it, and then so I read Graceling on Fire. They were really good. I mean, again, I read them as a kid, but I read them again. I thought Katza was so cool. Okay, Lords and Ladies, back to Discworld. Then I went back to the Golden Compass series. Again, I think I found this in a secondhand bookstore, and it was in Thailand or Vietnam. So I think my husband had never read it, so I was like, these are great. These were like, as a kid, I thought these were also the spiciest book ever. They're not. It's actually hilarious how much not they are. That as an adult, I still remember them as being spicy, so I had to go reread them to figure out where the spice was. Made it to the end, and I was like, what did I think was spicy about that? But it's a good book. I guess appropriate for little kids. But The Northern Lights, Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. Fun books. The way it ends is a little like, I was a tiny bit disappointed, but it was still really good overall. I would say yes, read it. Okay. What happened to Lonnie Garber? Pick this up in one of those like street libraries, just like, free books that you like have to return or you could switch or whatever. And I read the back and I was like, hey, interesting. It's just like a young adult like thriller kind of thing. It was so good. It's just like a coming of age novel where like people discover themselves, and again, when you write your characters well, I will come back over and over and over again. I will love you. I will keep reading you forever. Okay, then I finished the Graceling series, which was Bitter Blue, Winter Keep, and they got progressively worse as they went on. Like I just got a little bit more bored with them. Took a brief break to read Lore and then read Sea Sparrow. Sea Sparrow is the last one in the Graceling series. So that's the Gracing series, but Lore, I actually love Lore, and I was so disappointed because it's just a one-off. And I'm like, this could totally have been a series, but I really loved it. I thought it was super fun and action-packed and exciting and like romantic a bit. And then I went online to just like, I wanted to talk about the book with other people, and everybody was just like bashing it for not having enough representation. I was just like, can you stop ruining literature by like forcing it? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, I think books that force representation or diversity are not going to be good books. The author needs to naturally come to it or decide that she's going to write it. But like, if you're like, there wasn't enough of it, I'm like, hey, so maybe it wasn't the book for you, but maybe this book didn't need any more. Like, does that make sense? Maybe I'll make a lot of people angry by saying this, but I feel really strongly about this. It shouldn't be forced. It should be a natural thing. Next was a Stephen King called Joyland. Stephen King just writes very good characters. He writes well. He writes quick. You're like into the book and then right away. There's no like, it gets better on page 94. It's like, no, no, no. You're there immediately. So I really like Joyland actually. Okay. Then I read two Neil Gaiman books, Neverwhere and Anansi Boys. I'm not a huge fan of Neil Gaiman. Like, I want to be because he's like, people compare him to Terry Pratchett, who I love, and he has like so many books and they're all so much fun, right? Like I said, I read Coraline earlier in the year, but I just, it's hard for me to get into them because while they're fun, like I enjoyed Neverwhere more than I enjoyed Nancy Boys, it's still like, I don't know. I don't know why I can't get into them. I really disliked American Gods, which apparently I heard that there's a very big divide with people who are obsessed with it and people who hate it. So I guess that kind of makes sense. But I just, hard. It's hard for me because I want to like it. But okay. At this point, we were in London and we went to the Sherlock Holmes Museum. So I was like, I gotta read Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's what I gotta do right now. Gotta get into Sherlock Holmes and Watson. So I read A Study in Scarlet and The Side of Four, which was super fun. Yeah, yeah, they're fun. They're fun books. Again, they're very old, so like it's very much not modernized, but they're still really fun reads. I like the mystery as well. He writes some good mysteries. Okay. July, I found myself in a secondhand bookstore and I pick up this random book. It's got yellow on the cover. I have spoken about this before. If you watch every single one of my videos, then you'll know that I'm obsessed with Girl A by Abigail Dean. It was her debut novel. Just immediately grips me from the first page. I read it literally, like I got it in a weekend, read it in a weekend, read it again in the same weekend. The next weekend I read it again. Like I was just really into it for a while. That was Girl A. Uh, in that at the same time, I also bought myself a secondhand book. Realized it was a second in the series, so then I went back to get the first in the series from Amazon, which thankfully was only 99 cents, and my mom bought it for me. Thank you, Mom. So I read The Ninth Reign, which again, amazing book that nobody has ever spoken about, or like literally, I've never heard it before, but it's crazy fantasy, sci-fi, aliens, romance, fantasy. I already said that. Mystery. Like, great, great book. Great book. Highly recommend. I read the first, read the second, which I'll talk about, and I need to read the third soon, hopefully. Um, I also read something by Nora Roberts called The Awakening. Now, the only thing I liked about this book was the fact that the character is living the dream life. Like, she finds out she's a millionaire after, like, she hates her life. The character is living the dream life. She is a teacher, hates her life, finds out she's a millionaire, goes to travel to Ireland because her dad's from Ireland and he disappeared and she just wants to see where he was from. And Ireland is a beautiful country. I'm assuming because I went to Scotland and that was a beautiful country. And I feel like there's a lot of like sameness there, possibly. But and then she discovers she has magical powers and she gets a puppy. And then she writes a best-selling novel, or she gets a book deal to write a novel. She literally is living the dream life. So that's the only reason I liked it, but it was not written well. That's it. It wasn't written that well. I was like, eh. Nora Roberts, you wrote like 1,000 books. I expected better of you. That was July. I read Girlie in the Ninth Rain. August, I read The Awakening. I was not reading a lot at this point. Like, I think we were in Spain and I had a wedding at the end of August. So I was just like, it was a pretty busy time. Because we're going to the beach every single day, and I don't bring my books to the beach because I bring some books to the beach and not others, depending. But you don't want to get them all ruined. I don't bring my Kindle to the beach. That's what I don't do because my Kindle is not sandproof. In September, I didn't finish any books, but I started reading this Harry Potter fan fiction, and I finished it in October. Okay, called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It is the longest book ever. Like I said, it was like 2,000 pages, I think, and like 600,000 plus words, like crazy. And just, it was basically the premise of what if Harry was taken in, what if Petunia did not marry Vernon, but she married a different guy who was a professor. They're both professors, and they have Harry. And Harry is a prodigy, child prodigy. He's a genius, and he's obsessed with science because his dad's a professor of science or something. And it's just so amazing. Like it's very different than any of the Harry Potter books, but there's kind of like overlap. Quirrell is a huge part of it actually, which was also fascinating. Such a good book, and it took forever for me to finish. Like it was so long, but towards the end, I was like, just I need to know what happens. I need to know what happens, but it ends amazingly. Honestly, this author, like a lot of people like to berate him for just being stuck up and elitist, but I mean, he's also kind of a genius. Like he's pretty smart. They also like to say that it's a bunch of people just getting off on their smartness, like how much they know about rational sciences and stuff. I still really liked it. You could say these bad things about the book, but it was still an enjoyable read. So that's free online if you are into Harry Potter and you want to get into this crazy, massive, giant, enormous book. It was good. I also read a Harlan Coben book. I love Harlan Coben. I love his Modern Bollinger series. I don't remember it enough to even know. I didn't even write the name of the book, the title. I just wrote that it was by Harlan Coben. Then I read a book called At Revenge. Also a random book. My sister-in-law had it, and I just borrowed it and read it in like an afternoon. So, into November, I read the second book of that series I told you, like the Ninth Reign. So that's called, I think, Twin Blades. So I read that. Then I read Day One, which was by Abigail Dean, from that author I told you that wrote Girlie. So that was way less good. She's still a good writer, but the book left me feeling a little sour at the end. I didn't love it. Then I read Salem Falls by Jodi Picoult, which, no. And I read a Discworld novel, Masquerade. Super fun. Great book. Um, and then my husband read Fourth Wing because people kept recommending it. Like one of his friends kept recommending it, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll check it out." And I don't think he knew what he was getting into with romantasy, but he was like, "The plot is so good that it actually is fine that all the spice is there." Like he's like, he just skipped it, and I was like, "I want to read it because there's spice." I actually wanted to see what he meant by it, but it it's a good book. I really liked it. I really liked it. I actually listened to the audiobook because my library did not have the book, and he was so interested in knowing what it would sound like. He's like, how do they even speak those scenes? And so I played it for him, and he was like, okay, I don't need to hear this anymore. But it was really fun. I really liked Fourth Wing. Actually, I got a little bit like addicted to it, so I couldn't do anything. I was just like listening to it nonstop, doing all my chores that I needed to do, and I finished it in like 3 days. It's 21 hours, so that's actually, I don't know what else I did those days, but actually one day I was on a plane, so I guess it makes sense. I read this random book, Foreign Intelligence by Brad Thor. I'm not even gonna say anything about it. It was so lame. Then I read Airhead by Meg Cabot, who was great. Meg Cabot's great. It's just like, again, a light filler read between other stuff, but I need those. Like Meg Cabot used to be the person I went to for like my between the heavy fantasy books, and she's still good at it nowadays. It was a reread, so I knew it would be fun. Then I read Iron Flame. It was less good than fourth wing, I will say that. I liked it a little bit less. Why did I like it less? Because I felt like some things Violet was coming to the realization of certain things that I did not understand. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I don't think that's true though. I just think some things weren't obvious and I didn't understand why she came to those conclusions. So I'm confused at certain actions she's done, thinking that we're gonna figure it out as it goes on, but then we don't a lot of times. Sometimes we do, sometimes we didn't. So I didn't love that, but the ending was crazy cliffhanger. Crazy cliffhanger. I cannot wait for the next book, which I think is called Onyx Storm. And we're almost at the end. Rituals. Mm-mm. Already did a whole book. I already did a whole video on that. You can check it out here if you want to commiserate with how bad it was. And then another Discworld novel called Sorcery. So, like I said, I'm currently in the middle of Carpe Jigulum, which is another Discworld novel. I do have another, or I'm also in the middle of reading the Outlander series. I just found it again in a secondhand bookstore, and they happen to have had The Drums of Autumn, which I read the Outlander series. I guess, wow, at this point it was a while ago because it's not even. Oh, I read the third book of the Outlander series was the last book I read in 2023. And then I just like took a break because I was like, oh, I'm kind of done with these books. But I found it again, so I picked it up. But it's a big book. Like, let me show you because I actually have it. This is The Drums of Autumn. This is how far I am. So, like, I don't know if I'll finish this by the end of December. But if so, then I will have read 50 books. But yeah, that is a pretty nice amount to me. So, have you read any of the books that I read? I am really curious to know what you thought about them. Please subscribe for more book videos. Bookka is not over yet, I think, depending on how this order goes. Pretty sure I got at least one more in me. And like this video, or don't like it, but then let me know what you hated in the comments below. Thanks. The end.